The unexpected challenge. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars and countless civilizations. Among them, the Earth was considered small, insignificant even. For centuries, humanity had been looked down upon, regarded as primitive by the advanced races who roamed the stars. They had no advanced technology, no great fleets, no powerful weapons. But what they didn't know, what none of the great alien empires could have imagined, was that humanity's true strength lay in something far greater than technology. The leaders of the Conqueror Empire, a ruthless and powerful alien force, had heard of Earth, of the humans who lived there. They had watched quietly for years as Earth developed, slowly advancing its technology. But in their eyes, it was nothing. Their ships could travel faster than light, their weapons could obliterate entire planets, and their warriors were trained in combat techniques passed down through centuries of alien evolution. Earth's defenses were laughable, they thought. The humans were weak, small, and easy prey for their empire to consume. And so, the Empire's supreme commander made the decision. Earth would be their next conquest. There was no reason to fear them. Earth would fall just as easily as every other planet had. The Conqueror Empire was ruthless and unstoppable, and soon the humans would realize their place in the universe, their place beneath the might of the Empire. The order was given to mobilize the fleet. Warships, massive beyond comprehension, began to assemble in space, preparing for the journey to Earth. Thousands of ships, each armed with weapons capable of wiping out entire cities in one shot, each commanded by alien soldiers who had never known defeat. The strategy was simple: arrive, overwhelm, and crush the tiny humans. On Earth, the government was unaware of what was coming. Humanity's leaders were focused on their daily problems, economic issues, political struggles, and the challenges of the world. They had no reason to believe that the galaxy's most powerful empire was heading toward them. Their military was small, and while they had some advanced technology, they had never prepared for an invasion on this scale. In their eyes, Earth was too insignificant to be a target. But on one fateful day, the first signs of the invasion appeared. A strange signal was detected by Earth's space monitoring stations. It was faint at first, almost unnoticeable, but then it grew stronger. An alert was sent to the highest levels of government. Something was out there, moving toward Earth at an alarming speed. The reports came in one by one, confirming what seemed impossible. A fleet of ships, thousands of them, was approaching Earth. They were not human. They were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The ships were sleek, dark, and enormous, their forms casting shadows that stretched for miles. The warning was clear: Earth was about to be attacked. At first, people didn't believe it. It had to be a mistake, a misinterpretation of some kind. Surely, Earth wasn't under attack. There was no way. But the evidence continued to flood in. Images of the fleet began to pour in from satellites. These ships were real, and they were getting closer every second. In the heart of Earth's government, chaos erupted. The president, along with the military leaders, tried to make sense of what was happening. Emergency meetings were held, and within hours it became clear Earth was facing the greatest threat it had ever known. They weren't just facing an invasion. They were facing an empire that had crushed countless other civilizations. But there was one thing the invaders didn't know, one thing they couldn't possibly have predicted. On Earth, there was a secret that no one, not even the highest officials in government, knew about. It was a secret that had been kept hidden for years, buried deep in classified files. A program had been developed, one that could change everything. It was called Project Ascendant. This was humanity's hidden weapon, a project that had been created in the event of an invasion, an answer to the overwhelming power of the alien empires. Project Ascendant was not about advanced technology or overwhelming force. It was about something much simpler: humans themselves. In the depths of Earth's military bases, a group of soldiers, the best and brightest, had been training for years in secret. They were the pinnacle of humanity's physical and mental potential. They had been prepared for a war that was unimaginable to the rest of the world. These soldiers had trained to fight, not with advanced weapons or ships, but with their sheer will and determination. They had learned to tap into human potential in ways that no one else could even begin to understand. They had developed new tactics and fighting techniques, ways to adapt and overcome even the most overwhelming odds. And most importantly, they had the one thing that no alien invader could ever understand: a deep, unbreakable connection to their home, their Earth. As the alien fleet approached, humanity's leaders realized that they had no choice. They couldn't rely on traditional defense strategies. They had to use Project Ascendant, and they had to do it now. But there was a problem. The soldiers of Project Ascendant were still untested in real combat. They had been trained, but this was different. This was the real thing. There was no turning back. The Conqueror Empire's fleet continued to approach Earth, its commanders growing confident with every passing moment. They mocked Earth's weak defenses. They laughed at the thought of a small, primitive planet posing any threat to their power. To them, Earth was already as good as conquered. But they had no idea that Earth's warriors, the ones who had been quietly preparing for this very moment, were ready to answer the call. The Empire was about to learn that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. Earth's warriors had been preparing, and they had learned to fight in ways the galaxy had never seen before. They were not just soldiers. They were humanity's last hope, and they would not let their world fall without a fight. The invasion had begun, and the galaxy was about to witness what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The sound of sirens blared across Earth as the first signs of the alien fleet's approach became undeniable. Governments scrambled to react, military leaders rushed to the war rooms, and the population was forced to face the unthinkable. For the first time in history, Earth was being invaded by forces far beyond anything they had ever imagined. But even in the face of certain destruction, the true strength of humanity was about to rise. The alien fleet loomed in the heavens, a dark cloud of destruction drawing closer with every passing moment. Their ships were monstrous, seemingly impenetrable, with weapons that could incinerate entire cities with a single strike. Each vessel moved with calculated precision, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. Their commanders were confident, their victory already assured in their minds. On Earth, chaos reigned. Governments activated emergency protocols, the military went on high alert, and civilians were forced into panic. It was a situation they had never prepared for. The usual responses, diplomacy, negotiations, or even threats, were useless against an enemy who came with nothing but destruction in mind. Humanity had never been in a position like this, and they didn't know what to do. The realization slowly set in that they were about to lose everything. Despite the overwhelming odds, a quiet resistance began to stir. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't in its technology, and it wasn't in its military hardware. It was in the people themselves. In secret military bases scattered across the world, Project Ascendant began to mobilize. These were not the ordinary soldiers you would expect to fight for their country or planet. No, these were the humans who had been trained in the darkest, most secretive corners of Earth. They had been prepared for the impossible. They were humanity's ultimate defense, an answer to the overwhelming might of the alien fleet that was headed their way. The soldiers of Project Ascendant were not just warriors. They were humanity's finest. Their training had been grueling, more demanding than anything the galaxy's other races could imagine. They had honed their bodies and minds to perfection, learning not only how to fight, but how to survive against impossible odds. They had been prepared for moments like this, even though they never thought they would have to face such a terrifying challenge. They were the last line of defense, the last hope for humanity. As the alien fleet drew nearer, the Earth's leaders realized that they had no choice but to trust in this secret weapon. There was no time left for hesitation. Their best hope rested in these soldiers. The world watched as Earth's military commanders sent the first signals of coordination, preparing to deploy their finest warriors into the fight. Still, there was doubt. The soldiers of Project Ascendant had never fought in a real war before. Yes, they had trained for years, but nothing could prepare them for this. The aliens' warships were vast and powerful, and their weapons were beyond comprehension. Could humanity's warriors really stand a chance? The world had no answer. But as the alien fleet grew closer, something began to change. The people of Earth, who had been paralyzed by fear, began to stir with a new sense of purpose. They looked up to the skies, knowing that their fate was now in the hands of those who had trained for this moment. The once distant stars were no longer just points of light in the sky. They were the stage on which Earth's fate would be decided. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship of the alien fleet, the Supreme Commander watched with indifference. He had heard rumors about humanity's strength, their resilience, but he had dismissed them. No species, especially one as primitive as Earth's, could stand against the might of the Conqueror Empire. They were nothing more than ants, insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy. His fleet would crush them, and their planet would fall, just like every other. As the fleet approached Earth's orbit, the alien commander turned to his officers, giving the orders to prepare for the final assault. The ground troops would land first, sweeping across the surface to capture key cities and fortify their control. The rest of the fleet would follow, bombarding Earth from above, until nothing was left but ruins. But what the Supreme Commander did not know, what he had failed to consider, was that humans were not like the other civilizations he had conquered. They were not going to surrender without a fight. And those who had trained for this moment, those warriors who had honed their bodies and minds to perfection, were about to show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. The first signals from Project Ascendant went out, quietly, almost unnoticed. But those who had been watching closely, those who had prepared for this moment, knew the war was far from over. The true battle had only just begun. As Earth's warriors prepared for their descent from the heavens, the people of Earth braced for what would come next. It was no longer a matter of whether they would survive. It was a matter of how they would fight. The time for fear was over. Now the fight for survival would truly begin. The question remained, would humanity be able to rise to the challenge? Or would the alien invaders crush their hope before it could even be realized? As Earth's warriors prepared for the ultimate descent, the air was thick with anticipation. Soldiers in their battle armor stood ready, eyes focused on the skies above, awaiting the signal to deploy. The alien fleet loomed large, its enormous ships dwarfing the Earth's defense forces, but the human warriors were not afraid. They had been trained for this moment their entire lives. And now, the time had come. In hidden launch bays, the ships of Project Ascendant were fueled and primed for action. Unlike the massive alien warships, these ships were sleek, agile, and designed for rapid deployment. The human warriors inside were the elite, specially selected for their physical prowess, intelligence, and resilience. They were not just soldiers, they were humanity's final hope. And they were about to do what many thought impossible: face the might of an alien empire and take the fight directly to them. The signal was given. The ships ignited their thrusters and soared into the sky, breaking through Earth's atmosphere with incredible speed. As they ascended, the warriors could see the alien fleet in full view, its enormous ships slowly moving into position above Earth. The enemy was ready to strike, but the humans were coming, and they would not stand idly by. Up in the skies, the human ships broke through the clouds, racing toward the heart of the alien armada. Each ship was equipped with advanced technology, weapons designed to counter the overwhelming firepower of the invaders. These ships were fast, designed to hit hard and then disappear before the enemy could respond. They had the advantage of surprise, something the aliens did not expect. Inside the command ship, Colonel Sarah Hawk looked out over the battlefield. She was one of the top commanders of Project Ascendant and had led countless simulations, but this was real. This was no longer training. The weight of the responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. If this mission failed, Earth would fall. And yet, she felt something she had not expected: confidence. She knew her team. She trusted them. They were ready. All units, prepare for the first strike, Colonel Hawk ordered, her voice calm despite the tension in the air. The warriors inside the ships didn't hesitate. They were focused, every muscle and every sense honed for this one moment. They had been trained to face impossible odds, and this was no different. The Earth's defense was not just about fighting to survive. It was about fighting for the future of every human being left on the planet. The first wave of human ships locked onto their targets. The alien fleet had assumed the humans would cower in fear, that they would simply surrender. But they were wrong. The first wave of missiles launched from the human ships, streaking toward the alien vessels with unrelenting force. The aliens reacted quickly, their ships shifting into defensive positions, activating shields designed to absorb the impact of incoming fire. But what they didn't anticipate was the sheer force behind humanity's weapons. The missiles hit with an intensity that even the alien shields struggled to contain. Explosions rippled through the air as the first alien warship was struck, its protective shields failing under the relentless barrage. The aliens, stunned by the ferocity of the humans' attack, began to scramble. It wasn't supposed to be like this. They had never encountered a species that could fight back so effectively. The Supreme Commander watched in disbelief as his fleet, the fleet that had taken down countless civilizations before, was now being attacked by a species they had underestimated. "We need reinforcements," an alien officer shouted, watching as another of their ships was hit, sparks flying as the once mighty vessel began to falter. But the reinforcements were far away, and the battle was unfolding faster than the aliens could respond. The second wave of human ships arrived, striking their targets with pinpoint accuracy. Human soldiers dropped from the ships, gliding down toward the alien fleet in specially designed dropships. As they descended, they unleashed a barrage of firepower, targeting key weak spots in the alien ships. It was a brutal assault, fast and efficient. On the ground below, Earth's population had been watching the skies with bated breath. What was happening above them was beyond their comprehension, but they knew one thing: humanity was fighting back. The television broadcasts, the radio signals, and the digital networks all flashed images of the battle in space. The world held its collective breath as humanity's finest took the fight to the enemy. Back in the heart of the battle, Colonel Hawk watched as her warriors executed their strategies with precision. This was their moment. They had trained for years for this, and now they were proving the galaxy wrong. The human warriors were not just surviving. They were thriving. They were turning the tide of the battle in real time, dismantling the alien forces with every strike. The alien Supreme Commander was no longer calm. He watched in shock as his once invincible fleet began to crumble under the human assault. It was clear now that this was not going to be a quick victory. Humanity was no longer the weak species the galaxy had dismissed so easily. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the alien invaders had just learned that lesson the hard way. As the battle raged on, Colonel Hawk's voice cut through the chaos. "Keep pushing, soldiers. We will not stop until they understand the cost of underestimating us." The human warriors, their resolve hardened by years of preparation, responded with a unified cry. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of their people, and they would not let the invaders destroy their world without a fight. With each passing moment, the gap between the two forces was closing. Humanity's warriors were no longer the underdogs. They were the ones who controlled the fight. They had proven that when Earth was threatened, the warriors descended from the heavens with fury unmatched by any other force in the galaxy. The question was no longer whether humanity would survive, but whether the invaders could withstand the wrath of Earth's warriors. The battle had taken a sharp turn. Where the aliens had once held the upper hand, the balance had now shifted. The mighty ships of the alien fleet, which had seemed invincible, were now reeling under the unrelenting assault from Earth's warriors. It was as if the very air was thick with the energy of defiance and resistance. The once silent and helpless Earth had turned into a roaring beast of fury, and its warriors, now spread across the stars, were at the heart of this transformation. Colonel Hawk's eyes were locked onto the battle unfolding before her. She could see her soldiers moving with precision, fighting as if they were extensions of the very ships they piloted. The Earth's forces had adapted quickly, their ships maneuvering in unpredictable ways, striking from angles the aliens hadn't anticipated. The sleek, high-speed fighters danced around the bulky alien vessels, striking fast and then disappearing into the depths of space. Each hit was a promise that humanity would not go down without a fight. Her thoughts were interrupted by a flashing red light on her console. A warning. A massive alien warship was approaching, its weapons primed and ready to unleash hell. This wasn't just any ship. It was the flagship of the alien fleet, the Supreme Commander's personal vessel. Its sheer size dwarfed everything around it, and it was moving directly toward Earth's forces, a clear sign that the alien leader was intent on ending this battle decisively. All units, fall back. Target that flagship, Colonel Hawk ordered, her voice firm, cutting through the noise of the battle. She knew the alien commander would not give up easily, and this ship would be their strongest weapon yet. The humans had to focus on bringing it down, or all their efforts would be in vain. The human forces immediately shifted tactics. The fighter jets, which had been engaging smaller alien craft, now focused all their attention on the massive flagship. Meanwhile, Earth's larger warships formed a defensive perimeter, providing cover fire for the smaller ships that were rushing to engage the flagship. The alien flagship, with its enormous shields, had yet to take a direct hit, but the humans knew exactly where to strike. The flagship's shield was formidable, but it wasn't invincible. Colonel Hawk had learned from the alien fleet's patterns. Every shield had weak points, and the flagships were no different. As Earth's warriors made their way into position, they began to launch missiles, targeted precisely at those weak points. The explosions that followed were massive. The first missile barrage struck one of the flagship's outer shield generators, and a massive shockwave rippled through space. The alien flagship rocked, and for the first time, its defenses began to falter. The shield flickered, momentarily weakening, just long enough for the second wave of human missiles to find their mark. Inside the alien flagship, the Supreme Commander watched in horror as the once mighty fortress of his fleet began to crumble. His ships, which had swept through countless worlds with ease, were now being turned into targets. He had underestimated humanity. Now it was too late to turn back. His flagship groaned, its massive hull buckling under the barrage. But the Supreme Commander was not one to surrender easily. With a furious roar, he ordered his remaining fleet to converge on Earth's forces, hoping that overwhelming firepower would turn the tide. All ships, engage. Destroy them, he bellowed. His orders were obeyed immediately, and alien warships descended in waves, launching everything they had toward the human forces. Laser beams, plasma bolts, and torpedoes filled the space around them, lighting up the dark void like a deadly storm. But the human warriors were not intimidated. Their ships zigzagged, weaving in and out of the incoming fire. The battlefield was alive with chaos, and yet the Earth's forces remained calm, focused, determined. In the midst of this chaos, Colonel Hawk's voice rang out over the comms once more, unwavering. "We are not here to survive. We are here to win. Focus on the flagship, and everything else will fall into place." The warriors, their hearts and minds focused on their leader's words, pushed forward. The alien ships were relentless, but so were they. They were fighting for Earth, for their families, for the future of their people. Every soldier knew this was their defining moment, and they would not let it slip away. With a final volley of missiles, the flagship's shields finally gave way, and the ship's massive hull exploded in a spectacular fireball. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield, throwing smaller alien ships off course. For a brief moment, there was a stunned silence, a feeling of disbelief. The Supreme Commander's flagship had been destroyed. Humanity had done the unthinkable. But the victory came at a cost. The alien forces were still powerful, still numerous, and they were not ready to surrender. Even with the flagship's destruction, the battle raged on. The alien fleet would not retreat, not yet. They had underestimated humanity before, but they would not make the same mistake again. Colonel Hawk knew that the hardest part of the battle was still ahead. The destruction of the flagship was just the beginning. There were still countless enemy ships to fight, and the Earth's warriors had no intention of stopping. But for the first time in this war, the humans held the upper hand. They had struck a blow that would not be forgotten, and the aliens would have to reconsider their plans. The Earth's warriors had proven one undeniable truth. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. The battle was far from over, but a new fire burned in the hearts of Earth's warriors. The destruction of the alien flagship had shifted the momentum, and the invincible confidence the alien forces once held was beginning to crack. The fearsome ships of the alien fleet, which had once felt untouchable, now appeared vulnerable. It wasn't just the ships that were reeling, it was the alien commanders themselves. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were starting to realize the true cost of their miscalculation. Colonel Hawk stood in the command center of her flagship, staring out into the vast expanse of space. The hum of the engines was the only sound that filled the room, but in her mind, the noise of the battle was deafening. Earth's forces had gained a crucial advantage, but the enemy was still dangerous. It was clear to her that the aliens would not give up easily. They would be back, and they would bring everything they had left. "Keep your eyes open," Colonel Hawk said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "The flagship is down, but this fight is far from over. They'll be back in force, and when they come, we need to be ready." Her crew nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The warriors of Earth had shown incredible resolve, but this was just the beginning of a war that would define the future of their world. The aliens would regroup, and they would strike back. But humanity wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. Not ever. The human ships began to move into position, reforming into tight battle formations. They had learned from the chaos of the previous battles, and were now operating with a precision that only comes from relentless training and determination. The alien forces, though regrouping, were not in disarray. They were plotting their next move, and they were angry. The destruction of their flagship had been a huge blow to their pride, and their retaliation would be swift and brutal. In the deep corners of the galaxy, far from Earth, the alien commanders were rallying their forces. They had lost their flagship, the symbol of their dominance, and their warriors were beginning to question their strength. But the alien leaders were resolute. They would not allow their empire to crumble. They had to win, or everything they had fought for would be lost. The humiliation of defeat was something they would not tolerate. "Prepare for the final strike," one of the alien commanders growled, his eyes narrowed in fury. "The humans think they've won, but they have no idea what's coming." Back on Earth, Colonel Hawk's mind raced. Her forces had made great strides, but the alien fleet was still vast. There were still thousands of ships out there, and she knew they would come, bringing with them unimaginable firepower. The battle was about to escalate, and the warriors of Earth would have to rise to the challenge. "Get me a status update on all ships," Colonel Hawk ordered, her voice calm but commanding. The officers around her scrambled to relay the information, and the situation was grim. The human fleet had suffered losses. They had taken down the flagship, but the aliens were still fighting, still pushing forward. Their numbers were overwhelming. Yet, as the data continued to stream in, one officer gave her a piece of information that made her pulse quicken. "Colonel, we've detected something unusual. It's a fleet, an entirely new group of ships. They're coming from a region of space we haven't seen before." "What are they?" Colonel Hawk asked, her eyes narrowing. She had expected the enemy to regroup, but this was something different. A new fleet. It didn't make sense. "We're not sure," the officer replied, confusion in his voice. "But it's massive, and it's heading straight for us." The screen in front of Colonel Hawk lit up with the incoming data, and her heart sank. The fleet wasn't just large, It was enormous, and it was closing in fast. The enemy was calling in reinforcements, and these reinforcements were unlike anything the humans had faced before. Colonel Hawk turned to her crew, her mind already working through the next steps. "Prepare the fleet for battle," she commanded. "We fight until there's nothing left. This is it, people. This is our chance to end this once and for all." The warriors of Earth were not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of their world, for the people they loved, for the survival of everything they held dear. And now, as the enemy's reinforcements appeared on the horizon, Earth's forces knew they had only one choice: stand and fight. "All ships, engage the incoming fleet," Colonel Hawk ordered, her voice filled with unwavering determination. "Today, we make our stand. Today, we show the universe that humanity will never bow down. We are Earth's last hope, and we will not be defeated." The human fleet, battered but unbroken, surged forward. The alien reinforcements came in waves, their massive warships looming in the darkness of space. The battle that followed was unlike anything either side had ever experienced. The air crackled with energy as weapons fired, and the space between the fleets was filled with flashes of light and explosions. But the warriors of Earth were unyielding. They fought with everything they had, driven by a fierce desire to protect their world and prove that they were not to be underestimated. This was humanity's fight, and they were determined to win. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the aliens had underestimated the strength of human resolve. Earth's warriors had shown them that, no matter how many ships they sent, no matter how powerful their technology, there was one thing the aliens could never defeat: the will of humanity to survive. And in the heart of the battle, amid the chaos and destruction, Colonel Hawk knew one undeniable truth. This was not just a fight for survival. This was a fight for the future of Earth, and they were winning. The battlefield was a storm of chaos, filled with the flash of energy blasts and the dark shadows of massive warships colliding in the cold expanse of space. But amidst the cacophony, the warriors of Earth held firm. They were not like the alien invaders, who relied on superior technology and overwhelming numbers. No, humanity's strength was something far greater: their unity, their determination, and their unbreakable will to fight for their survival. Colonel Hawk stood at the command center, her eyes locked onto the chaotic scene unfolding on the view screen. The enemy had thrown everything they had left at Earth's warriors, but they were not ready for what came next. Humanity had come to fight, not just for Earth, but for the future of every species in the galaxy who had been oppressed by the alien invaders. The alien reinforcements were formidable, yes, but they had no idea what kind of warriors they were up against. Earth's forces, battered but resolute, had learned from every battle. They had adapted. They had overcome. And now, they were ready to strike back harder than ever before. "Commander," an officer called out, interrupting her thoughts, "we've spotted a weakness in their formation. Their fleet is being stretched thin. If we strike now, we can break their lines." Hawk's eyes narrowed as she calculated their next move. The enemy's numbers were still overwhelming, but their unity was faltering. They were no longer a single coordinated force. They were divided, and that was their greatest mistake. This was the moment they had been waiting for. "Launch the full offensive," Hawk ordered, her voice filled with steel. "All ships, focus on the left flank. We break them here, and we drive them back." The fleet of Earth's warriors moved into position. Each ship, no matter how battered, carried the same unshakable resolve. The alien forces had underestimated their strength, and now they would pay the price. On the front lines, the alien ships tried to regroup, but the human fleet was relentless. They moved with the precision of a single, unified force. Every ship in the fleet worked together in perfect harmony, each commander aware of their place in the grand strategy. It was no longer just about tactics. It was about proving that humanity was not to be underestimated. Colonel Hawk stood motionless in the center of the command center, her eyes never leaving the view screen. The battle was far from over, but she could feel it in the air. Victory was within their reach. "Keep the pressure on them," Hawk said. "Do not give them a moment to regroup. We've come too far to lose now." The human fleet surged forward, their ships darting in and out of the chaos, their weapons firing with deadly accuracy. The enemy was struggling to maintain control of their forces as more and more of their ships were disabled. The once unshakable alien force was now reeling, desperate to hold the line. But Earth's warriors pressed on, unyielding in their pursuit of victory. The alien commanders, watching the battle from their flagship, were beginning to panic. They had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy that, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, refused to surrender. Their tactics, their superior technology, their overwhelming numbers, nothing was enough to break the spirit of the humans. "Commander, they are breaking our lines," one of the alien officers shouted in disbelief. The commander's eyes blazed with fury. "No, we will not lose to these humans." But it was too late. The tide of the battle had turned, and the human fleet was gaining ground. They had found the weakness, and now they were exploiting it with relentless precision. The alien reinforcements, once seen as an unstoppable force, were now scattered and disorganized, their ships picked off one by one as Earth's warriors closed in on them. The human fleet moved like a storm, a force of nature that could not be stopped. Every explosion, every victory, pushed them closer to their ultimate goal, the defeat of the alien invaders and the freedom of Earth. Colonel Hawk watched the scene unfold, her heart pounding. She knew they had made it this far, but she also knew that the hardest part of the battle was yet to come. The alien commanders would never surrender, not unless they were forced to. And in the heart of their flagship, a new weapon was being readied, a final desperate attack that could wipe out the human fleet in one fell swoop. "Captain, get me the status on that flagship," Hawk ordered, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "We're tracking it, Commander," the captain replied. "The alien flagship is charging up its weapon systems. It's preparing for a full-scale assault, aimed directly at us." Colonel Hawk clenched her fists. "We're not going to let that happen." Her mind raced, thinking through the options. They couldn't let the alien flagship launch its final attack. If they did, everything they had fought for would be lost. But the alien fleet was still powerful, and the flagship was heavily protected. It was a near impossible task. But Hawk knew what had to be done. It wasn't just about the battle. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be defeated. "Prepare all ships for the final assault," she commanded. "We take down that flagship, no matter what it takes." The final strike had begun. The final battle had arrived. Everything they had fought for, every sacrifice made, was leading to this moment. The human fleet, battered and scarred from the long campaign, now stood on the precipice of victory, or total destruction. They had pushed the alien invaders to the brink, but now, in the heart of the enemy's armada, the alien flagship loomed like a shadow of doom, ready to unleash its ultimate weapon. Colonel Hawk stood at the command center, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as the alien flagship powered up its massive weapon systems. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of Earth and the fate of the galaxy. Humanity had made its stand, but could they defeat the aliens once and for all? The alien flagship, a massive behemoth of technology, thrummed with energy as its weapon systems charged. The aliens had nothing left to lose. Their pride had been shattered. Their fleet was crumbling. But the flagship was their last hope, a weapon so powerful it could wipe out Earth's entire fleet in a single strike. "Commander, the flagship is preparing to fire," an officer called out, her voice tight with tension. "It's going to hit us head-on." Colonel Hawk's jaw clenched as she watched the massive energy beam begin to coalesce on the alien ship's bow. She had seen the destructive power of this weapon firsthand, and it could obliterate everything in its path. This was humanity's darkest moment, but also their final opportunity to win. "We can't let them fire that weapon," Colonel Hawk said, her voice cold and resolute. Get me a full fleet status now. Sir, we've lost communication with 3 ships, another officer replied. But we still have enough firepower to make one final assault. The room fell silent as everyone realized the gravity of the situation. The human fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, and now faced with the full wrath of the alien flagship's weapon. But they had one thing the aliens could never replicate: the relentless spirit of humanity. Gather all forces. We fight until the end, Hawk ordered. We make a final push, and we hit them hard. Now, the fleet of Earth's warriors moved into formation, each ship knowing what had to be done. The alien flagship was heavily defended, but the cracks in its armor were there, and humanity had learned to strike at those weak points. They would not wait for the enemy to take the first shot. They would make their move now, before it was too late. Colonel Hawk felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. This was the last chance for humanity to prove its worth. The fate of Earth and the galaxy itself rested in the hands of her warriors. She trusted them with her life. They had fought together for months, surviving, adapting, and becoming stronger with every battle. All ships, full speed ahead. Attack formation, she commanded, her voice clear and unwavering. We're taking down that flagship. For Earth. With that command, the human fleet surged forward, each ship accelerating toward the heart of the enemy's defenses. The alien flagship, towering and unyielding, loomed large on the view screen, its weapon charged with growing intensity. But the humans would not hesitate. The battle intensified as the 2 fleets collided. Energy blasts lit up the void of space as both sides unleashed everything they had. The alien flagship fired its first shot, a massive energy beam that tore through the darkness, narrowly missing the lead human ship. The shockwave rocked the fleet, sending smaller ships careening off course, but they quickly regained their formations and pressed forward. It was a desperate, chaotic dance of destruction, as each ship tried to avoid the alien flagship's deadly fire. Colonel Hawk watched, heart pounding, as her ships fired in perfect synchronization, their weapons striking the alien vessels with precision. But the alien flagship's defenses were still strong. Their shield systems held firm, and its weapons kept firing relentlessly. Then, just as the flagship fired another devastating beam, Hawk saw the opening she had been waiting for. The energy shield on the alien ship flickered, just for a split second. Before it reactivated, she knew that this was humanity's chance. Now, all ships, hit them with everything, she shouted. The human fleet unleashed a barrage of firepower, targeting the weakness in the alien flagship's shield. Every blast, every missile, every weapon they had left, tore into the alien ship's weakened defenses. The flagship's shields flared brightly as they struggled to hold against the onslaught, but it was clear humanity's warriors had found their moment. Direct hit, Commander, one officer called out. The shields are down. The flagship is vulnerable. Keep firing, Hawk ordered. We can't let them recover. The human ships pressed on, launching missile after missile, blasting the alien flagship with everything they had. Finally, with one last massive explosion, the alien flagship's core exploded in a fiery burst of light. The enemy flagship, once a symbol of their power, was reduced to space debris. But the victory wasn't without cost. The battle had taken its toll on Earth's fleet. The once proud ships of the human warriors were battered, their hulls scarred and dented from the onslaught. The alien forces, though weakened, still fought fiercely. But without their flagship, without their commanding presence, the rest of the alien fleet was falling apart. Colonel Hawk exhaled, the weight of the battle finally lifting from her shoulders. The alien forces were retreating, their remaining ships scrambling to regroup, but it was too late. Humanity had won. The enemy is retreating, an officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. Hawk nodded, her eyes scanning the vastness of space. Earth's warriors had done it. Against all odds, they had defeated the invaders. Their resilience, their unity, their courage had turned the tide. We did it, Colonel Hawk whispered, almost in disbelief. "We've saved Earth." But she knew this victory was not just about Earth. It was about something far greater. Humanity had proven to the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. They had stood against the darkness and emerged victorious. This was not just the end of a battle. It was the beginning of a new era for Earth and the galaxy. The war was over. Earth had won.